If everyone will find a seat. Is this on? There it is. Is this on?
Hello.
Let's-
If everyone can please take your seats, we're going to begin the meeting.
Gosh, Mr. DeBose even came. Let's see. Right. Welcome to everyone. This is the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Montreat. It's our regular quarterly meeting. And we want to welcome all of our guests and just so glad y'all are here. We feel like this is an important committee that affects a lot of residents of the community because we are dealing with things in the future, particularly as it relates obviously to zoning. So we're glad y'all are all here. Let's start with a moment of silence. Amen. The next thing on our agenda is to adopt the agenda. I would like to propose some changes to the agenda before we adopt it. And that is to move the Montreat College presentation to follow Roman numeral 5. So that would follow P and Z committees, which is basically just re-electing the Hillside Development Committee. And at that point, that will help them not have to stay here while we review all the ordinances and things. And we'd like to help them move on to other work. The other thing I would like to do is move the committee updates to follow or to come in with, or to follow the Montreat College presentation so that at the end, we're really just going through the amendment proposals. So we'll get the real business out of the way and then we'll go through that. If that's all right. So with those notations as amendments, would somebody like to move the adoption of the agenda? What? We haven't gotten that yet. We're gonna get that. Okay, that's on the agenda. Right? All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed? Thank you. Now we're going to organize the commission further. Sally Stansel and Bill Tucker. I think we all know Sally. She's been here before. This is a second term for her, I believe. And Bill is a new member. We're so glad you're here. He lives in Atlanta and Montreat. And he's a former banker, so he'll bring a lot of that expertise to us. So we're glad you're here. And if y'all will come up out here, the mayor's going to swear y'all in. Okay, well, let's go ahead, since we've got them out here, let's go ahead and do that.
Sally, you're up first. Come around here. So you can read. And then you won't have to remember so much, but you can swear more. I, Sarah Sally Stansel, swear that I will well and truly execute
the duties of alternate membership of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Montreat according to the best of my knowledge and ability. Second.
This is effective the 13th day of October 2022. And you and I will both sign this in just a second. Bill, if you'll come up. Bill, you need to swear on the front. Place your left hand. Right hand, please, sir. And
I, William Bill Tucker, swear that I will well and truly execute the duties of alternate membership of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Montreat according to the best of my knowledge.
this is effective the 13th day of October 2022.
I was watching it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome to y'all officially, and I'll turn these over to Kayla when we, two witnesses. Okay, well, Dan and I'll do that before the meeting is over. Thank you all and welcome. It's been our practice, Kayla, and you're new to us too, so we've always seated the alternates up here, not that they vote, but we do think it's appropriate for them to participate in the discussions so that they bring their expertise to us, but they do not vote unless there's a member missing. That's great. So, and I think Alan Crawford is not here, so we will need one alternate commissioner. And Sally, since you've got seniority, I'm going to ask you to take Alan's place until at least he gets here. Sometimes he comes in late. Will you do that? It's great. Thanks.
Bill, Alan, will be out the next few months serving, the Spirit first.
Oh, he is. Okay.
I spoke with him. He's not in attendance.
Okay, right. Thank you. I thought you were going to say he's serving and I wondered what prison he was in. Thank you, Tom. Okay, all right. The next point on our business is to reestablish the Hills. Oh, we got to go back to adopt the minutes. Sorry. Is there a motion to adopt the minutes as previously circulated?
I have one correction, then I'll make a motion. As you know, I deal in small details, on the page 2, the section on Monterey Comprehensive Plan. The last line says, to ensure compliance with 160 requirements for a reasonably update comprehensive plan. Seems that means to be either reasonably updated comprehensive plan or reasonable update to the comprehensive plan.
Which do you prefer and would you like to make a motion?
I think the statute actually talks about a reasonable update, so I would make a motion that we add the words to the between the quotations and comprehensive plan.
Is there a second?
I'm sorry, could you read the proposed change again? Update
No, it would be reasonable update to.
two, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, could you ask the motion again?
Are you seconding the motion?
I second the motion. now.
Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. And so I guess we need to do, let's have a motion on the minutes as amended to be approved. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. It passes. Okay, the next business is to reestablish the Hillside Development Ordinance Committee. I think Kayla, when she got here, felt like it really wasn't properly constituted, so she felt like we ought to go ahead and reconstitute it. There's no real change. It's already been meeting and we'll meet again. So would someone like to make a motion that we adopt as the Hillside Development Ordinance Committee, Wade Burns as chair and Liz Johnson and Bill Shy to be the members? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? There being none, the motion passes. Now, we're delighted to have Monterey College here. President Maurer is here. And he's got colleagues John Bean and Tommy Hendricks. And there may be others, but I think you've got the consultant with you. And we would love to hear preliminarily interesting things about your conference plan that you're working on. And we would like to schedule another time after you've been to your board and you're a little bit further along, that we can have a more thorough discussion. So we would love for you all to make your presentation.
Morning, everyone. I'm a little offended the mayor walked out on me before I heard it. So you can put that in the official record, please.
And let the minutes show that this is Dr. Maurer, who's the president of the college.
Yeah, no, I don't want that. I just wanted to note that I'm offended. So
Thank you for being here.
thank you for that introduction and thank you for the opportunity to come to this group in a very preliminary way. And I appreciate the preliminary part of the introduction because we are in a very preliminary stage. of a full comprehensive master plan for the college. As most of you know, we've been in a growth mode for a number of years. This is our 8th consecutive year of record enrollment for the college. Some of that's online, some of that's traditional, but our traditional enrollment has grown and we have spilled out over into renting beds from Richard and the MRA. We're renting beds from the Ridgecrest Conference Center. We've got 200 students this year in rented beds because we ran out of beds about 5 years ago. And we think that we'll continue to grow. The good news is we have a 89-acre piece of property in Black Mountain that the college has owned for about 20 years. And there's never been a master plan of that entire property. There have been bits and pieces of planning for residential housing there, but nothing that took the entire 89 acres into account. We received an appropriation from the state of North Carolina last year to build a cybersecurity anchor building for the state. And the intent all along has been to put that piece of, put that building on the Black Mountain property. And so because of that, we knew that we needed to engage in a full comprehensive master plan. But what that means for us is how do we take the legacy campus, the main Montreat campus here in Montreat, and the 89 acres in Black Mountain, and how do we put those together in a cohesive way for the future of the institution? Our vision is to continue to grow both traditional number of students as well as online students, and with other parts of that, but growth is in our vision, and we think that will continue even with the declining enrollments in most of higher education. And so we hired LS3P after a RFP to do that work. They have not yet presented their initial recommendations and ideas to the Board of Trustees, which happens tomorrow. I've got my fall board meeting that starts today and all day tomorrow. So that'll happen for the first time. The board will not be making any final decisions on master planning tomorrow, since it'll be their first view. And I would anticipate that the final decision-making on master planning from the college's standpoint would likely happen sometime, probably at the January board meeting. That's my guess. I don't know that for certain. So we're heavy into it now. They've been meeting with constituent groups. They've met with about 20 constituent groups, including members of the town, the mayor, alumni groups, again, Black Mountain, Montreat. We're trying to cover the waterfront in terms of making sure that the stakeholders necessary get a chance to speak into the process. And so I think I'll stop there with that as by way of introduction. And I'm going to introduce John Bien, our Vice President for Finance Administration and CFO, to introduce LS3P, and we'll let them take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Dr. Bauer. Thank you for the invitation to be here. This is a really important part of our process of trying to understand both campuses. What can we do with current facilities? What can we think about for new facilities, primarily at Black Mountain, as the president said. And so when Bill invited us to come, I was really appreciative of it. And yes, we will definitely come back and continue to share as the project develops. So what I would like to do is introduce to you two members of the LS3P team, Emily Kite and Jessica Gardner. And Emily, why don't you come forward? And Emily maybe will just try to facilitate some conversation, because we are information gathering. We want to know from you, gather some insights from you as to what you think some of our opportunities are, some of the things we ought to be aware of and maybe cautious about. Not trying to filter anything. Listen to anything that you have to say to us. Thank you. Emily? Thank you, John.
Make this a little shorter. There we go. Well, really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you all today. We are in about the second step of our process and leaning into the third step of our process. The first step is really for us to gather a lot of data about the college and understand what property the college owns and how it shares property with MRA and the adjacencies of the neighborhood that surrounds the college. We've talked to, like, I mentioned, about 23 different stakeholder groups at this point. And that process has really allowed us to kind of synthesize consensus ideas that we're hearing about opportunities that the college has from various stakeholders, not all of whom are really college stakeholders, but all those sorts of folks that are sort of adjacent to college in both locations. And so we've started to see some emerging themes around the information and feedback that we're getting. And we also look for the sort of outlier or kind of disruptor information. It's what if we think about this really radically and do something completely different than we think we should do? We test those ideas and come up with different scenarios that start to speak to the goals the college has and ways to achieve those. One of the big things that we're wrestling with as part of master planning is how do we accommodate the housing needs for the college and plan for growth and to take care of buildings that they already have and to strategically figure out how to kind of invest in Black Mountain so that allows us to, over time and in phases, really develop that into an operational full campus that includes some of those housing needs. So I'd love to hear from y'all what you like about the college, what you think that some of the opportunities are in Montreat specifically, or what you think about the fact that Montreat's going to really share property in Black Mountain as well and have kind of a two location campus for really a lot of those students who travel. So I'd love to hear from this group what some of the opportunities that are special about Montreat College or what you wish you could hear from the college in form of a master plan.
Thank you. Louis. In just a minute, I'll ask people if they have questions. But I hope in your process that after you make your preliminary presentation, I guess it is to the board, you can continue to do the work. So I hope y'all will come back to us at another meeting, which we've discussed, with where we can hear some of that. So we're not just sort of grasping at straw, what y'all are planning to do so we can say, so that would be very good or that'd be very disruptive. And so I hope we can do that. So thank you.
Yeah, we've certainly got a presentation sort of started, but I think plan to take a little bit on the road once we've gotten some feedback from the sorry, certainly be part of the plan. I think one of the questions that we all have wrestled with and have come up in some of the stakeholder meetings is how does Montreat College grow in Montreat? We know we have a fixed amount of property and we have a lot of stakeholders in really close knit ways throughout the campus and with MRA and with residences in Montreat. So I'd be interested to hear a little bit of feedback about how you see the college sort of wrestling with the idea of growth in Montreat and how that might relate to the town kind of in the future.
Great. Well, anyone have questions or comments or suggestions? And keep in mind, this is a real opportunity to influence before they even get to their final preliminary plan. So I'd say don't be bashful. And Bill had his hand up first.
Maybe just a clarifying question for me, and others may know this, but what is Montreat College's kind of target enrollment and over what period of time, and how much of that is cybersecurity versus other disciplines?
I think in general, the plan, the target for in-person on-campus enrollment is to reach a capacity of 1,200 students. And we're currently a little bit shy of 700 students at the moment. And I think a portion of those are cybersecurity. That's going to be kind of a really interesting building that's got partnerships and relationships with industry and also academic programming as well for cybersecurity. And I think that there's certainly intention around growing the enrollment. That program has continued to grow in its current operational conditions. But I think in general, the idea is to try to reach about 1,200 students in campus, in-person enrollment. I think the target is ambitious. It's around 2030. We'd like to hit that spot. So there's a pretty tight window to help with this, and that the cybersecurity is really a little bit of a catalyst for both the development required to accommodate that number of students, but also as a booster to increase enrollment as well.
And just one comment, so I used to stay at Indy Oaks, in the seventies when I was a high school youth, church youth member, and had the opportunity to go back and visit, the property a couple of months ago with the Swananoa Valley Museum. This is one of their hikes. So I'm really kind of just personally interested in, how your plans for that property evolve, the historical aspects of it, as well as the broader campus you built.
For sure. I think at this point, all of the recommendations that we're making, keep that building on campus. Certainly in restoration we're in need of restoration and renovation around that building, but we are actively sort of incorporating that into an overall campus picture. So we would certainly be keeping that. So the recommendations that we're making.
Let me just follow up to ask one more. That 1,200, is that, do you mean by that, by 2030, having that here in Montreat, the students housed here, or both places? Or have y'all under?
Yes.
Let me help. So just a slight amendment to what Emily said. The target is between 1,000 and 1,200. So it's in a range. So we don't have a hard number of 1,200. So we think in that 1,000 to 1,200 is a healthy sweet spot for a liberal arts institution. We've seen that model all over the country, and that's kind of what we're targeting. We don't really have a number at this point for the number of students in Montreat. Montreat College, when it was originally built, was built as a school for 500 students. And so what we know is that's too small. And it's why Montreat College almost died multiple times over multiple decades. You have to grow. The purchase of the Black Mountain property 20 years ago by the Board of Trustees gives us the opportunity to do that, to grow in a healthy way. So we have about 400 beds currently on the Montreat campus. And so how many more beds in Montreat is partly a function of renting, potentially purchasing, and potentially building in Montreat. But we certainly don't see all 1,000 or 1,200 housed in Montreat. We would certainly house some large portion of the growth on the Black Mountain property. But I think the question we're wrestling with is what opportunities still exist for us to continue to expand some version of that housing in Montreat. That helpful?
That's very, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Liz.
Well, no, I'm very.
So I just wanted to note, I really appreciate you all coming early. I mean, the transparency of coming to discuss this is really greatly appreciated. And I know that means that you'll hear concerns,
For sure.
but then you'll be able to address them. So thank you for that. I think that is really important. And I want to make sure that we state that. So as we think about the comprehensive town plan from the perspective of the town of Montreat, I would imagine there are certain concerns that we're wrestling with that would be relevant, such as development and how to do that consistent with the town of Montreat. And I know, Dr. Maurer, you're part of that whole set of discussions, so you're very familiar with it. But I would, rather than go through the list of those, I think that's a great reference to just think about the conversations that the town is already having. I greatly value a healthy college in the town of Montreat and one that's growing. I think it's just a really important part of the fabric of the town. And one of the reasons my family was drawn to this town. But I also think the question of how to develop in a way that is consistent with the town, and also an understanding of the pressure on the infrastructure and how the town is going to need to maintain that and pay for it. So there's a natural tension there that I'm not sure we've completely figured out yet.
That certainly lines up with feedback that we've gotten from other folks there, and the college wrestles with similar burdens on traffic and roads and parking, and that certainly has come up in our conversation. So that's one of the kind of key buckets of information that we're tracking and trying to respond to in healthy ways. our process, the outcome of our process is not a building or what a building's gonna look like. It will be here's a place a building could go. And how do we understand when we might need another academic building as we track what that growth might look like? Or where is housing gonna go and how big does that housing need to be and how much inventory do we need to have? And so you will see very little in the way of, this is what a future building will look like. But you'll see a lot in the way of, this is how we think we could put new buildings either in Montreat or at Black Mountain to account for the growth that we're expecting. And a little bit about the scale of that. Certainly when we count housing, we know how tall buildings need to be or how many buildings we need to have to accommodate that. But it's a lot about where will it go and when do we need it? Is a lot of what the information that the outcome of what we'll have at the end of this.
What kind of feedback are you getting from the students, other than I realize having to house off campus is an inconvenience? I see the shuttle going back and forth all day long. What kind of feedback have you received from the students as far as their expectations are concerned, as far as this comprehensive plan is doing?
A lot of the feedback that we've gotten from students centers around student life, which is certainly important to them. They would love to have opportunities to be involved in things on campus and to stay on campus in weekends and evenings, and to have better access and more access to faculty in organized ways and opportunities to collaborate with other students and to study with other students and to reach faculty easily on campus. I think certainly the offsite housing at Ridgecrest has been a big part of the conversation around housing, and that is affecting student life in ways with students being pretty isolated on that campus without access to dining facilities and other things like that. And so we are looking at ways of being able to be less dependent on Ridgecrest housing in the future and enhancing facilities that we already have to help support academic growth and access and collaboration for students, and encouraging non-athlete students to enroll at Montreat College. We've got a really pretty high percentage of students who are athletes on campus. And the idea is that they'd like more balance between students who are athletes and students who are not athletes, and opportunities for all of those students to really interact together. Has been a lot. Part of it.
I have a few comments, but I'll start with a question. You'd indicated you talked to 20-some stakeholder groups. I just wonder if there's been any action with the residents and cottagers themselves. Have you had any meetings with them one-on-one? We get a lot of feedback.
We have had
If you're to the-
at least one opportunity to meet with residents. We've also met with the town mayor. And I think the intention is to continue to talk to residents. On a little bit short notice last week, we had a few folks able to attend on that particular day. But certainly the feedback that we got from those folks that we met with was that we should be continuing to reach out to residents as part of the ongoing process. And I think that's the intention for the college to continue to do that throughout really the course of the fall before the January trustee meeting as well.
I guess my comment would be, I congratulate and celebrate with Paul and the college on their success and growth. Commend you for all your efforts and success in that. As a resident, I guess, and I'm hearing from some others as well, over the past 2 or 3 years before any of this came about, and knowing all his plans for the future and this long-range plan they're doing, there's been some concern that maybe they're reaching their maximum capacity within the town now with the parking problems we're all having, traffic problems, and certainly in particular areas, especially Lookout Road, whatever. When were we going to hit that maximum point of growth within the town, and we need to start looking elsewhere. And so talk about adding 500 more students, certainly within the gate in this small community. Concerns a good number of us and those I've been talking to. And I guess where you put it in their obvious locations would be the ball field, I guess, and the property up high above the dorms on Appalachian near the old president's house, as we call it. So the idea of building another dorm, however size, there concerns a lot of us. So I guess my comment would be, as you look at that, I would encourage strong consideration of the Black Mountain campus for future dorms and the location of a large number of students. I'm just really concerned. This little town with its limited access with one road going in and out with the traffic concerns that we're already seeing with the current number of students. I think it's adding even a few hundred more permanently within the gate. It concerns me greatly, and I think I'm not the only one that shares that. So I would encourage you to look outside the gate for future beds. I realize that raises its own set of problems, and I understand that, and I acknowledge that. So, and then there was one other comment now just left me. I guess my final question is, am I right in saying that's the two pieces of property you would consider if you were considering residential additional dorm space here on campus?
We have gotten some, what I would describe as outlier feedback around looking at other properties and exploring options beyond the two pieces of property that Montreat currently owns. I think most of those, exploring most of those options have sort of reached a dead end for us in a lot of ways. Availability of property being one, proximity to the two campuses that we already have, and those kinds of things have leaned us towards really maximizing the use of the two properties that the college currently has in Black Mountain and Montreat.
You know, one last comment somebody mentioned to me the other day, and it kind of hit me between the eyes. I thought it in those terms is that if you were to add I think 500 students within the gate at the end of town here, wherever you would put them, it was almost equivalent of adding a new subdivision with about 200 new houses just overnight, with all the traffic, the infrastructure, strain on the current infrastructure. It would just add to it, and it sound, when you think in those terms of a subdivision with 200 houses, all of a sudden it gets you thinking about the consequences and whether this town could actually handle that. So that's the concern that I would express, and hope y'all would consider that.
Thank you all for coming. It's exciting about the college. We appreciate the college here, but I would just really like to echo what my fellow members have said, just some really good comments and questions. My first question would be, maybe you could have specific ways for the community to give input. If you would really explore that so it's well advertised. It's important in this little town community that we have a voice. And it's unique to have a beautiful college campus with a rich history within a small community like this. And yet it's the community that bears the financial burden. And that's an important aspect. And so I think just having good discussions, good, open, transparent discussions about things. But just thank you for coming. And I just really echo the comments that have been made, the concerns and the excitement at the same time. You know, we love young people and want good education and appreciate the college here in town and just hope the best for them. But we appreciate you being transparent and coming to us at an early stage. It does seem kind of quick that you're going to have this done by January. Is that the plan, to kind of have a preliminary presentation for your trustees? Did I? Oh, okay. So you'll know more tomorrow. Okay, we understand that. Right. Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks.
I have a thought. We're kind of a paradigm where this is true here and this is true for the other side. And we're kind of a one-sided, we're all cottagers, either renting or owning, and we make all the rules. And we benefit because of primarily these two institutions. And 48 years as an architect, most of that as a planner, the difference between a healthy college in a community and the community losing a healthy college is pretty drastic. And the things that we cottagers think about, maybe a little bit more close to home and maybe shorter in our thinking. Many of us shorter in the time we got left. I hope we will be welcoming of bold ideas that help you in the core piece of having a healthy campus life, and that's part of the education and so forth. And It'd be interesting to see if there were ways that, for instance, that with housing, if there were housing that was put here and it was somehow legal, that it was leased housing so that it was actually contributing taxes, that would give that stakeholder a lot more power and whatnot. I don't know if that's even possible, but I just want to acknowledge that from my almost 50 years, that college is critical to the quality of this community, as is the conference center. And so hopefully we'll be open to innovative ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Wade. Other,
I just want to clarify my comments. I don't hope they weren't interpreted as being negative to the college. I support the college. I think its presence in Montreat is critically important, as all the institutions are, the conference center, et cetera. Without any one of them, I think that it would be an entirely different place to live. So the vitality, the vibrancy, the activities that the college brings to the community, I think is vital. So I certainly support it. My only comments were have we reached the limit of what we can support within the gate, and growth, that's your decision, how far it grows and so forth. But I would just hope to seriously consider that additional growth, perhaps not all being within the gates, but be hopefully a lot of people like that campus. But I don't want my comments to be interpreted as being anything negative toward the college itself. Far from it. I support, commend them, and celebrate with them their success.
any other comments? Well, thank you all very much. It's helpful to us to have a preliminary conversation, and I think that this is, but also that when we can get together. Y'all will be meeting with the board over the next couple of days, and so I don't know if y'all are ready to set a preliminary date. Maybe we can do that outside of this, and we can circulate that when y'all know more about your plans. But I would just reiterate that it would be important to have it not so late in the process that it's too hard for y'all to incorporate just because of where you are. So y'all have been very gracious to come today. Paul, your leadership at the college, I think all of us have just been amazed over the last 9 years in it. That's the change is just incredible. A lot of people have been involved in that, but it's your leadership. We're grateful for that. So it's been a great boon to not only your students and faculty, but also to this town. So, thank you. Tom.
Is there an opportunity for comments from
Yeah, that's not unusual, and yes, we will, recognizing though that there will be an opportunity for the public to participate later too. But we would welcome particularly the comments of the president pro tem of the town council.
I'm the one that tells everybody to step up to the microphone. So I will try to step up to the microphone. I just wanted to comment that I am, like all of you, very appreciative of the college coming today and sharing their thoughts with us of what's to come, and very proud of them for what they have accomplished, particularly in the last 8 years. We enjoy a kind of a three-legged stool here in this town between the conference center, the college, and the town. One cannot live without the other. That stool would fall, and we all need each other. The comment that I would offer to the college and the planning team is that selfishly, speaking as a town commissioner, there are infrastructure issues, which I know you all have probably talked about, but I would love to see, if you have not included it in your planning, some impact studies that would be looked at a traffic impact study for one, a water impact study. Do we have the capacity as a town to provide not only the potable water for you, but for any buildings that you put in, they're going to be sprinkled. So there's fire prevention issues that create a bigger demand actually than just potable water. And any other impacts that would be stormwater, for example, that is a huge issue for this town right now. So I would really strongly implore you to look at those impact studies on this little bitty burg. And the mere fact that, as Paul said earlier, the college was built for 500. How do you shove another 500, or in this case, 600 beds, if that's the plan on this campus? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Tom. Others? And Paul? Yes.
I just want to reiterate and clarify, there is no part of the plan to have 500 more residential students in Montreat. We didn't imply that. We didn't say that. That is absolutely not the plan. The question is, can we continue to do some version of our growth in Montreat? It was never. So I just want to absolutely clarify. The idea is not to have all of our residents there. We will have residents on the Black Mountain property. We have some opportunity with land that we own in Montreat for potential construction. Whether that's academic or whether that's residential, we're not that far in the process. And is there opportunity for us to purchase? We don't know the answer to that either fully, but I just want to take off the table the idea that there will be 1,000 residential students in Montreat. That's never the concept, and we don't plan for that in any form or fashion.
Thank you. That's a very helpful clarification. And again, just thank you again for your leadership. That's an example of it, and keeping us informed. And as either Liz or Julie said, if we can be transparent going forward and get enough into the process ahead of time, that would be helpful. After y'all know more about what you will do, and then we can respond to that. Anybody else? Well, I'll get with John, I guess, we'll get another date set, and we want to thank y'all again for coming, and thank y'all for all y'all add to this community. It's wonderful. Okay, thank you. Caleb, is that anything else you want? Thank you. Great. Moving on in our agenda, let's move to committee updates. The first is the Hillside Development Committee. These are just updates, not anything elaborate, they're just sort of where we are. Wait,
About 30, 40 minutes.
what is
We will have a
is there a
presentation.
motion to adjourn?
We will have a presentation in November. More toward the end of November. Good. And we'll get into some detail then.
That's great. Thank you. And Liz has been a very important member of that. You've been digging into it. Keeping weight on it. So I think that's very important. So, thank you.
Bill, if I may clarify.
Yes.
So like Wade said, we're going to be scheduling a meeting, and at that meeting, I'm going to review the ordinance with everybody. And then Wade and Liz and Bill will talk about, maybe some changes, areas we could address, things like that. We're looking to schedule that at the end of November, beginning of December. So just keep your eyes out from an email from me.
And while it'll be a subcommittee meeting,
It will,
anyone is
Yeah.
welcome to come.
it's open to the public. So the public is also welcome to come as well.
Kayla's been a great addition. She's been very helpful in providing information, and her expertise is great. So thank you. Montreat Sign Ordinance Committee, I think that's Mr. Hinkle.
Yeah, we have no update other than the fact that those that are serving on the committee should be receiving some updated information shortly. once that information has been received, I've talked to Angie. She said we do not have to give the required time for a public meeting. We can give 2 weeks notice. And
Today's notice,
I mean, 2 days notice.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 2 days notice. And once that is received, then we'll go ahead and reconvene.
Thank you. The zoning ordinance amendment research committee, Mr. Dean.
No report other than, we're still in the same holding pattern we've been in some time, waiting for the large controversy to resolve itself. So we won't be giving the appearance of interjecting ourselves into that, matter.
Y'all
So
remember Dan has been consistent about that. And that's we don't create new opportunities for litigation.
No, so we're still in the holding pattern.
Any questions of any of the committee chairs? No, of the committee.
Oh, okay, thank actually not about the next committee meeting, but when the town college is going to come back, I would love I would love to be here in person for it. So if any advance notice that you can give, and I think a lot of people probably want to.
I agree with you. My intent is to get with John, get some possible dates.
That'd be
and then
great.
Circulate that. So we can-
Thank you.
Great. Let's see, that's the end of the committee. So let's. We got one, I want to think of one matter of new business that was in our packets that I just got this morning. Then Kayla's going to lead us through. Okay, right. All right, well then I'm going to ask Kayla if she will then present her observations, recommendations concerning, first of all, the subdivision ordinance, and then the comprehensive wireless ordinance. So, Kayla, the meeting is yours.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, board members. I think are we still the morning? Yeah, we are. All right. Good morning, board members. For the record, my name is Kayla DiChristina, and I'm the zoning administrator for the town of Montreat. TA 202201 is a text amendment request put forth by the zoning administrator on behalf of the Board of Commissioners, specifically Mayor Pro Tem Widmer, to amend the town of Montreat subdivision ordinance. Before I begin, I enter into the record my presentation, staff report, subdivision ordinance amendment application, and amended subdivision ordinance. Next slide, please. Okay, so this text amendment covers multiple sections, almost all of the sections of the subdivision ordinance. Its purpose is to revise the ordinance to comply with state statute revisions under 160D Article 8 and to correct and clarify various sections, specifically definitions, town staff titles, and references, terms, and responsible parties. So before we start, I just want to note that any amendments that I propose that are directly cite the statute, those are pulled directly from the statute word for word. These proposed amendments have been reviewed by the town attorney. So I'm really moving through these for purposes of edification. There are some specific areas I'll point out where I think we should have some discussion. But for the most part, these are pulled directly from the state statute and are required to be in the ordinance. Okay.
And just so you know, 2 lawyers have been on this, and we have a habit of nitpicking. I'll put myself in that category. And I know there's one other person here that's a lawyer that does that.
That's why
So
I
be
make that
patient,
statement.
Be patient, be patient. with
Yep.
All of us. I
Yep.
hope everybody else has had some time to go through it too.
Yeah.
So, okay, thanks.
Okay, so I just want to also state that the review of the amendment, so there is quite a few. I broke it up into 3 sections: state statute, definitions, and then clarifications. Next slide, please. Okay, so first section is state statute revisions. So Article 1, we changed the reference to Chapter 160A 371 through 160A 376 to reference Article 8 of Chapter 160D, which is where the subdivision regulations are now found. Article 3 under definitions changed again the reference to the new section in 160D that talks about definitions. Yes, Bill.
And do you want us to have our comments as we go through it? I think. you
Yeah,
probably do.
let's do comments as we go through it.
So I had a comment on 300.6. It's mainly clarification. I'm not really wed to it. That's 300.6. It's on page 4 of the red line thing you sent. Or the short version. The word used or occupied is applied to any land or building shall be construed to imply that said land or building is actually arranged or designed.
So Bill, that's going to be under the definitions.
Right,
So
I understand that.
no, under the definitions section of the presentation. So right now we're just talking about what was pulled in from the state statute.
Oh,
This is a different edition. That's okay.
okay.
Um,
Well, then
so-
we'll just wait to get them all.
we'll pause on that. We'll pause for some discussion on the definition changes, definitely. Okay, so under definitions, also the probated will exemption from what is, yes, Liz. Oh, no, that's okay. No, so, under, again, under Article 3, I also added the probated will exemption, which is an additional, situation where something is exempt from subdivision. So this is the division of a tract.
You're going too fast.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sure. Yeah, this is under
Can you get-
section,
Can you go to the page numbers so we can?
page 5
Okay.
of the amended subdivision ordinance. Under subdivision, it's number 5. Yes. Yep, I can do that moving forward.
And Kayla, one more question. Are the
Yes.
ones that are marked in orange, all statute additions?
Yes, the ones that have this red highlight, orangish reddish highlight,
Okay.
that's the specific statute that
That's-
text was pulled from.
So anything that's in that orange highlight needs to come in verbatim in order to comply with the statute?
For the most part, I'll point out when it's not.
Okay.
Yes.
And we've got some cleanups on those that are mainly language, but we'll see what you say when we get. to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so page 5 of the amended subdivision ordinance, under the definition for subdivision number 5, again, added probated will exemption. This is the division of a tract into parcels in accordance with the terms of a probated will or in accordance with interstate succession. That type of division is exempt from the subdivision ordinance. Next slide, please. Okay. Under Article 4, so we're going to move to page 6, under section 401. Yes.
Back to page, excuse me, back to page 5.
Mhm.
I just need some clarification
Sure.
as we're going through definitions.
Mhm.
The little section of minor subdivision is a subdivision of land, so on and so forth. And I noticed in the notes on the side, is that actually from the state statute or was that a definition that we are coming up with?
So that is not from the state statute, but that's going to be in the next section
Okay.
of presentation. I just want to cover what is in the state statute to start, because
Okay.
these are the things that are pulled verbatim.
Okay. Thank
We
you.
will get into this addition of this large section of definitions under section 300, the definition for minor subdivision, a couple of other definitions I've added, and then some of the clarifications I made. So to start, I'm going to jump around a little bit because I want to cover what was pulled verbatim from the state statute. Then we'll come back and discuss some of these pieces that are more fluid. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. Bill?
It seems to me to be a lot easier, whether it comes from the statute or not, it's your recommendation. It'd just be easier to take it along the way and be easier for us to follow along. But if you do it like you want.
Let me take a look at my notes really quick and see if I can, if we can do that, because I've structured the presentation this way. Let's see. Yeah, I think we can do that. We're gonna move around we're gonna jump around the presentation a little bit. Okay. All right. So let's go to Article 3. We'll get into the definitions. Sorry, hang on one second. Article 3. So if we can jump to slide 10. You can exit out of the presentation and just do it that way. It's fine. So let's jump to slide 10. Okay, so we're going to do what Bill suggested. We're just going to go section by section. Okay. Might mean we move a little slower though.
Yeah, because I don't think we really care where it comes from because you've done a good job.
Okay.
With that. Just give that thought. So then I would like to go back to my comment.
Yes. Let's go back to that. Yeah. Yes.
Which is, what was it?
Now, given that, let me clarify where this came from since we are jumping around a little bit. All right, so section 300, this addition, this green text in the staff report, page 3 in the amended subdivision ordinance that is at the end of the staff report. These interpretation of certain words and terms, this was a recommendation from Susan Taylor Rash, town attorney, to add into the subdivision ordinance so that the interpretation of the terms and regulations is consistent with what's in the zoning ordinance. So what I would recommend is that unless there's something specific that feels like it's related to subdivision rather than the zoning ordinance, unless it's something of that nature, I would recommend keeping the revisions to this minimal so that we have consistency between the two ordinances. And then we can come back later and do a larger revision of both interpretation sections so that it's consistent between the two ordinances, since the subdivision and zoning ordinance rely on each other. They're intertwined.
So this is lifted word for word.
Word for word. Yep.
So if I wanted to suggest in 300.6 that it would be ready, readable. If in the second line you said construed to imply the said land or building is actually arranged to design or use occupied whether or not actually. So never mind, I'll take that. I see what you're doing.
And I encourage you guys, if you do have
Yeah, so
suggestions
that's
with
the zoning
this.
ordinance. We don't need.
Yeah, if you guys do want to amend this, I do encourage you to make some revisions and we can come back and look at both of those sections later. I just want to make sure for purposes of, kind of this interim period between making another amendment, we have some consistency.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just used to doing things like this.
No, that's fine. That's fine. And I'll point it out, but keep track of those revisions because we definitely can come back and revisit them. Okay, so the next section. So Susan advised me to add several definitions. The only thing that was defined was subdivision, but the subdivision ordinance talks about a developer, a subdivider, and townhouses as well. And so Susan recommended defining those terms. So this is page 5 of the staff report, page 3 and page 4 of the amended ordinance. So the definition of a developer was pulled directly from the state statute. And the definition for subdivider also, the definition of subdivider refers to the definition of developer. That's just something I came up with, open to changes on that one. Townhouses was just,
Excuse me,
Yes.
before you leave those two,
absolutely,
I have a comment, suggestion,
Sure.
request, what the right word is. Under developer, and I heard you and I understand, I looked up the statute that is lifted from the statute. In the statute, when it has the definition of developer, it also defines person. When I first read this, it said person. My first thought was, what about a corporation or some
good
other
point.
legal entity other than a person?
Mhm.
And in the statutory definition for developer, it in addition to that has a definition for person, which then includes all of those legal entities. So I would suggest that we insert the definition for person as well, if we're going to
Sure,
use this definition for developer.
I like that idea.
And then my second comment on this subdivider, you define it as saying just refer to the definition. And my question is, or rather comment is, it seems to be that we're saying a subdivider and a developer are identical. And so they're defined identically. And if that's the case, I think we should say that, not just refer. We should say subdivider shall be
Why can you just say shall be a developer, any developer?
well, I was just going to say subdivider shall be interchangeable with and have the same definition as developer. that's what we're saying, and it
yeah.
sounds like that's what we mean.
They are, so either copy the definition from developer or just,
Rather than repeating all that and then having to tie in the person as well, I would just say subdivider shall be interchangeable with and have the same definition as developer, without having to repeat all that lengthy language. That's my recommendation.
so interchangeable with and
And have the same definition as developer with a capital letter, which would then make it a term that's defined. A developer and capital D on developer.
okay, that sounds good.
You
As
want to make changes as we go, Bill? You want a motion to make that, or how do we?
No,
go
we'll
about it?
just, I think we're just gathering. I think you'll probably. bring
we can go back through them
back to
and
us.
yeah,
And so you got the definition of person, you're going to insert that.
Yeah, I'm
from
gonna
the
add that in there.
Statutory definition.
Personal provided developer.
person will be also pulled from the general statute, which is
It's in 160D-102.
okay. So the definition of a person verbatim from the general statute is an individual, partnership, firm, association, joint venture, public or private corporation, trust, estate, commission, board, public or private institution, utility, cooperative, interstate body, the state of North Carolina and its agencies and political subdivisions or other legal entity. So we can just, yeah, okay.
Okay.
That sounds good. Okay, and then again, added under the definition of subdivision, added that, probated will exemption. All right, so we did not actually have a definition for a minor subdivision, prior to now. So I propose the definition, a subdivision of land involving no new street construction, no rights of way dedication, no utility extension, and no utility easement dedication where 4 or fewer lots result after the subdivision is completed. So minor subdivision is not defined in the general statute. However, I did look at 2 other small mountainous towns, Maggie Valley and Clyde, and looked at how they defined subdivision and pulled in the most restrictive definition that I could make out of that, which is this.
How is minor subdivision used in the ordinance?
So a minor subdivision is one that does not require a preliminary plan. It's something where someone would come in and say, hey, I've got this large piece of land and I want to cut it in half and build and have an option to sell half of it. Whereas a major subdivision would be something where, again, you're building roads, you're dedicating utilities, you would be looking at something that would have a far more complex design and far more greater impact on infrastructure.
Yeah, the only comment I would have on that minor subdivision is, and you'll learn, I do a lot in form as well as substance, is if you're going to do it as a definition, the format should be the same as the other definitions. You would write the word minor subdivision, underline it, period, then have your definition.
Okay.
So it's the same format that we have for all the other definitions about.
You got it.
I just have a question on the need for a difference between subdivision and minor subdivision.
Well, later in statute, I think it has different procedures for approving.
A major subdivision and a minor subdivision are different. So we could define major subdivision as well. However, the way that this is currently written, so we need to define subdivision. We need to define minor, and then, based off of those 2 definitions, anything that's not considered minor is considered major. We could explicitly state that, but we do have to have a difference between the 2.
Okay, I guess my question was because our community is so small and the land usually is small. I guess my concern is if you have someone that owns property, they can build homes, 4 homes on that property, as long as they're not having to do utilities. Do you understand what I'm
I
saying?
understand what
guess
you're
because we're
saying.
small. That's what I'm trying to.
We can
understand.
lower that number. We can lower the
Does
number
anyone
to
have any
2.
Thoughts about that or?
This is
advice?
exactly what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
To me, I think Kayla's experience with it.
Yeah,
It doesn't, I think your point is well taken, but I don't really think.
The
Okay.
subdivision,
okay.
subdivision ordinance was hurriedly put together. With a large parcel being in mind.
Mhm.
It was Billy Graham's failing health. About 200 acres, and then there's another large tract of Rainbow Road. And so this was put together, thinking of a major development taking place, so. The minor subdivision in 52 houses was a major subdivision. You wouldn't have an act of Congress to do it, they tried to do it in 2003. Zoning orders doesn't allow you to build 2 houses. In spots. So, that minor subdivision ought to be there, so requiring Congress. I would say, I would eliminate the no utility easement dedication from your language, because I don't think you can build a house without giving the power company an easement to get across to your meter. So. I would eliminate that.
So just another, just to kind of jump ahead, and we'll get to this later. When Susan and I worked on this, the way that a minor subdivision is approved, the way that it's currently written in the ordinance, and I, again, would recommend we revisit the specifics at a later time. The way that it's currently written, the zoning administrator does not have approval to approve final plats for minor subdivisions. Let me actually back up. So with a minor subdivision, in my experience, minor subdivisions, because again, they are minor in nature, you're not constructing a new road, you're only dividing a small number of lots. Those are typically approved at the administrative level by either, your planner, your planning director, zoning administrator. Again, like Wade said, major subdivisions are a much larger process. You're dealing with more lots, you're dealing with addressing, constructing roads, things of that nature. So those require a preliminary plan of subdivision. And typically that approval, it will come to planning and zoning and then be approved by Board of Commissioners. They'll go through their construction process, construction plats, road plats, everything. Then when they're finally ready to actually plat the lots, they'll come back through the same process to get their final plat approved. That's typical. Now, the way that it's written in the ordinance and the way that it is currently written in the ordinance, it's not clear because we don't have a definition for minor subdivision. Now, the way that it's written, it assigns the final plat approval to the zoning administrator, but part of that final plat approval requires a discretionary decision that is not clearly outlined, as in if it meets A, B, C, D, it meets this standard. Zoning administrator cannot make discretionary decisions. So further in the packet, and we'll get into this a little bit later, the proposed changes that Susan and I worked on, every plat will come through planning and zoning. So minor or major, because of the way that it's written. And while I do believe in expediting minor plats, I do also understand some of the concerns that we have with available land in Montreat. So, right now, this will be enforceable and we can revisit the specifics of that at a later time. So based on the way that this is written, what will happen is all final plats will need to come to planning and zoning commission for minor subdivisions for approval. And then major subdivisions will have to have a preliminary plan of subdivision and a final plat. Preliminary plan of subdivision will come to planning and zoning for recommendation, Board of Commissioners for approval, and then the final plat will come to, I believe it's planning and zoning for approval. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that's what is gonna be a result of these changes. We can look later at whether or not we want to designate the minor subdivision approval process to the zoning administrator, because that is, in my experience, has been common. Because again, you're dealing with a small lot division. Again, you're saying you aren't making new streets, things like that. But we can talk, we can,
That
dive
can be
deeper
done a
into
lot
that.
quicker too. because without-
Yeah. Sure. Does that make sense?
Taylor, if I could add one thing to that. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to clarify. What are we gonna do with this section today? Because right now we have so many questions about this. I find it unlikely we're gonna be able to address all changes and questions and approve it.
So again, most of the changes are pulled from the general statute.
Understood.
This particular thing we're discussing right now
Right,
was a clarification and revision. So there aren't, it looks like a lot.
right.
There's like a lot of red, but in reality, most of that is just pulled directly from statute and it needs to be in here because this ordinance is not in compliance with the state statute.
Understood.
Yeah.
What
So
what
we
I
need-
would be suggesting is that we give this input, we get a redraft and we need to do it again. I don't know.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
We can, but
The end.
I would not advise waiting until January.
Well, I wouldn't wait till January. I'd have special.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine with me if we want to
That's
do
what I'm
that.
saying.
My concern is waiting until January because of the state that this ordinance is in.
Sure.
Yeah, I have,
That's a,
So we need to keep your question about the number 4 on the table. Okay.
well, and yeah, we can discuss all of those right now,
that's what I think.
but yeah, and then we'll come back. Bill will call a special meeting and
But-
do.
We're gonna do that.
Just one quick, it helped me and it might help y'all. We seem to be bogging down on this definition of minor subdivision, like we're creating some new animal here. If you, and I'm sure y'all have read through the subdivision ordinance to go to, for example, section 601, it talks about procedures for handling application for approval of minor subdivision. We already have minor subdivisions throughout the ordinance. All this is doing is just add a definition of what is a minor subdivision. We did not have a definition and Kayla and Susan have come up with a definition. So that's the only reason
And again,
this is here.
we can take it, yeah, this isn't a new process.
No,
Yeah, we
it's
can
just
take
adding a
it down
definition.
from 4 to 2 lots, from 4 to 3.
Let's just get rid of that question now. Does anybody want to propose a change to minor subdivision, either in the numbers? Wade, I heard Wade say something about not including the requirement for utility extension. Does anybody want to make a motion? He runs, so Caleb gets our input. And Liz, do you want to do anything on the number? You don't have to. That's how you go through it.
I feel like 4 is a lot.
And Liz, if it helps you, I've seen places that do 2. I've seen places that do 3. The first place I worked did 5, but it was a rural county. So it really is up to you guys how you want to handle it, but it needs to be 2 or more.
I mean, obviously it's more taxes for Montreat, but I personally am not aware of that many lots that could accommodate 4 houses. Aren't most of the lots like half acre or less? So not really sure where the 4 would be applicable.
I'm just want you to make a decision on one way or the other. So we can move on.
Now it's going to be 4 or less.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to move that we change it to 3.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed. Thank you.
And while we're doing this, can we also get a motion on Wade's deletion?
That's what I'm gonna move there. Does anybody? Do you want to actually make that as a motion, Wade, or do you not?
Wade, Mike,
I've got my mic. I move that the no utility easement dedication be removed. That language is 4 or 5 words be removed.
I second.
I'm opposed to that. I think that's significant. The utility easement, Wade was saying you don't have, you may not have to have an easement on your property, but if you're going to extend an easement, extend a line that requires an additional easement, if the utility easement already goes up to the boundary of the house, which it probably does, the boundary of the lot, then you don't need it. So that it handles it.
If
But
you're going to
if
sell,
you need a new easement, then I think you ought to be.
if you're gonna, unless one person's gonna own all 4 houses, then it came off the things right there in the road, then the power company is not gonna hook up to your meter unless they have an easement to get to those other three. So it's just, or other two, how many?
Well, it seems to me if you're going to require an easement, then it ought to be.
I'm trying to get easement right now. It's a lot.
Well, I'm just expressing my opinion. Y'all ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Excuse me.
Yep. To remove the words no utility easement from the language.
No utility easement dedication. But my question for Wade is, how does no utility extension play into that? That's still required. You're not asking to remove that. What's the difference between a utility extension and utility easement dedication?
The power company requires an easement for everything they have between themselves and the meter. They've got to have the right to go on their land and go wherever they need to. They're responsible for what's on the other side of every individual meter. And so
Is it recorded easement?
yeah, they are all, the power company's easements are recorded.
From the road to the house?
Wherever it is that they were gonna cross.
There's not a recorded utility easement from the road to my house for the utility line goes on my lot.
And you have one house.
Okay. But you said it was required on every, from the boundary to the house.
That's where my law degree stopped. The only thing I know from both building and architect that they're responsible up to the meter. And so they've got something that's in clause.
Okay, any other comments? You all ready to vote?
Well, Kayla, I have one question because you said Maggie Bowing and Clyde. There's no, over here in the sidebar, there's no comment about the utility extension or easement in that. Okay. Was it something separate that you, some information that you all gathered?
I don't see in my notes whether this was a revision proposed by Susan or if it was one proposed by me, unfortunately. However, what I will say is that just speaking generally about the purpose of a minor subdivision, this is for something that, again, is kind of minor in nature. You know, we're looking again at someone who says, I want to divide my property in half. You know, it's not meant to accommodate major divisions of land that would have a significant impact on infrastructure, things like that. So utility easement dedication, now that I look back at this, so no right-of-way dedication. So I believe that right-of-way dedication was revised to say utility easement dedication. So with right-of-way dedication, if you're doing a subdivision and the town, and there's some reason where you would have to dedicate right-of-way either to expand the road, something of that nature, a subdivision that would generate a requirement of that nature should not be considered minor. That should be decided by the Board of Commissioners. However, speaking to Wade's point, the utility easement, that could really mean a variety of things, a power line, gas line that maybe just crosses your property for some reason. I hesitate to give my opinion, but easements of that nature are more just to ensure access. So for some reason, a gas line was built across your property and we want to ensure that you maintain access. Whether that's a decision that needs to be brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Commissioners, I leave that up to you guys to decide. We could revise that language to specify right-of-way dedication. We could leave it as utility easement dedication. Again, just kind of going back to the process of what a major subdivision entails, you have to basically go through 2 steps of approval versus just 1. So it extends the process. I will say that in my previous job, I did work to establish, part of my job was establishing easements, making sure that, lines weren't crossing properties that didn't have the ability for the people to maintain those gas lines, water lines, power lines, whatever. So establishing an easement of that nature, just to ensure access, doesn't feel as big of a lift to me as something like a right-of-way dedication would. Does that kind of make sense, or am I rambling? I'm not sure.
Well, yes, making a little sense to me. The concern I have, it's not so much the dedication. If you have a dedication, that could raise it in a recorded easement, that sort of thing, raise it to the level where we do maybe need something more, maybe throw it into the major. If it's that involved and complicated, requiring dedications and recorded easements and so forth. I'm more concerned with the no utility extension. I don't understand how you could ever divide a lot into 2, 3, 4, how many, and not have a utility extended to those extra lots. So it seems to me, I'll put no utility extension in there. You've kicked everybody into a major extension. It's no longer a minor extension.
I can see that.
You've got to have a utility extension if you have more than one house.
Mhm.
You run a water line, run a sewer line, run a
That makes
power
sense.
line. So you just,
Sorry.
so I would say we need to eliminate the utility extension. I'm okay with leaving everything else in there because they are somewhat more complicated and that may require major subdivision ramifications and approvals.
The
Does that
dedication
make
would
sense?
normally be recorded, whereas just an extension.
Just an extension, just sounds like you're just running a water line.
Wait, are you all right with that?
Here it is. In Clyde and Maggie Valley both include no utility extension or utility easement dedication.
Yeah, I don't understand how they can have a minor subdivision
Mhm.
ever.
Yeah.
Without having a utility extension.
Charter cable.
Well, I'm talking about if you're dividing one lot into 2 lots, you're gonna have 2 utilities going to each of them.
Now, when it speaks to utility extensions, I would guess that they mean in the street versus just pulling a tap.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I interpret as pulling a tap or running a line up to that.
Was pulling a tap. Okay. So, I mean, we could revise that to be more specific as to what the extension would entail as far as, other than tapping into existing lines, things of that nature. If that's something the board is interested in, we could take it out entirely.
Wade, it's your motion that was seconded. Are you happy with maybe deferring this until we get the revision and working with her on that when it comes back? I'm okay with whatever you like. Great, thank you. Dennis. Is that because you can?
What was the
You're
motion?
going to revise the language and come back to us with this next meeting.
How am I know the revision for 3 or fewer lots, but what is the revision that we're proposing for utility easements and no utility easement dedication? Do we need more information to make that decision?
I thought that's what you just said.
Is that what, okay. No, I just want to be clear.
Well, don't withdraw it, because we'll still need to act on it.
I thought Kelly was trying to get some direction from us as to what the draft today, but
So we are good on making the change to reduce it from 4 to 3 lots, but we need more information on what exactly constitutes utility extension and what exactly constitutes no utility easement dedication. And then we can come back when we look at the overall draft and revise that. Okay, good.
And if we get it early enough, that we can start to look at it.
Yeah.
And maybe then, I'm thinking out loud now, we could also give you comments. when we make it. So you could,
I'd prefer that be done in a public meeting.
whatever.
I prefer comments be given in the public meeting. Yeah. Okay, so moving on from that, townhouses. So this definition is one, I just did a general search for how townhouses are defined. This is a term used in the ordinance that Susan recommended we define.
What-
Oh, sorry, we're still on the same page.
Why-
Page
why-
5 of the staff report.
Why do we need a definition of townhouse?
I don't know, Susan recommended it.
I don't.
If you guys
personally-
don't, if you guys don't want to
I don't-
define
Is it
townhouses.
referred to anywhere else in the ordinance like minor subdivision clearly is? I understand that
Mhm.
reads the definition there. I'm just curious.
Townhouses
I-
is in the ordinance.
It is? I don't
It
remember
is, yeah.
seeing it.
it's-
Well, if you have, right now, it's only 2 living units if you had a half an acre or something like that. And then there's issue of the contiguous with attached. So this just is cleanly states 3 living units in the common law.
It's under section 501.2.
Okay.
Which is page 7, yeah, of the ordinance.
It's just the definition doesn't give you a right to do anything.
I understand, but there's no reason to find something if we don't need it. But I hear you. I'm all for the mind. I just don't remember. It's 501.2.
Page 7.
You have
3E.
what, three, E.
Page 7,
I see it, I see
3E
it.
towards the
I
bottom.
see it. I see it. Now it's got a side setback. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
The only question I had on this was changing the word to attached, or does it require attachment? So they're not attached. I was gonna say connected, but that's only.
I mean, if the words could be interpreted the same way, but if that's the change you guys want to make, that's fine.
I'm not dying, but it's not really attached. So I would propose connected. So I'll move and change that to just a second. I can't- anybody like to-
Well, while you're splitting hairs there, I was just gonna say the comment says 3 dwellings attached via a common sidewall. They're really common side walls, because they're 3, there'd be 2 side walls, right? 1, 2, 3. You wouldn't have 8. They're not all 3 attached by a common sidewall.
Should we say via common sidewalls?
That would be my recommendation.
Okay, so can I get that as a motion?
I so motion.
And so, thank you. So the motion now includes changing attached to connected and changing sidewall to sidewalls
And deleting A.
and
Yep.
deleting A.
And I didn't hear a second on that.
Second.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Before we move on, I just want to jump back for a second, just to be sure we get motions for these other changes.
Yeah.
Just for the record. So just moving back to the definition of subdivider. The definition proposed by Dan is interchangeable with and has the same definition as a developer with a capital D. Can we get a motion and a second for that?
Dan moved
I'll
that.
motion. I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
And then Dan also recommended adding the definition for person from the general statute. So can we get a motion and second?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Perfect. All right, and then minor subdivision. is, Julie, and then, okay, yeah. That was recommendation. Okay, moving on. So next page. We've got, and I'm within the amended subdivision ordinance, page 5, section 400. Before, the development jurisdiction of the town of Montreat was just referred to as planning and regulation jurisdiction. General statute refers to it as planning and development regulation. So we just changed that to update that
Any objection?
terminology. Clarified these regulations and article to refer to ordinance, so that's consistent. Approval of plats, again, revised town limits to be planning and development regulation jurisdiction.
Any questions?
I just,
Yeah.
it says planning and development regulation jurisdiction, the town of Montreat. I think the word of should be asserted before the town of Montreat.
Yes. Can I get a motion for that?
So move.
Second, we said. We just put of in on line
Yep.
two. Jurisdiction
Oh.
of the county.
Extended the deletion too far.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Thank you.
Do we need to have a motion to approve planning and development regulation?
I don't
throughout
think
the ordinance?
so. I don't think so. I think we'll just
Okay.
we'll do motions for amendments. And then just assume everything else is approved. Okay, next is just change to capitalization of deeds. Following that, added that the review officer is yeah,
Where are you next?
we're still in 401.
Got it.
So the review officer is, so before this was added, the Buncombe County Register of Deeds was the one who was reviewing the plats. That's what this was saying. So the review officer is the one that's designated to review the plats for conformance with the subdivision ordinance. The general statute requires that the review officer be sworn in, which will happen. I'll be the review officer and I'll be sworn in tonight by the Board of Commissioners. It's a requirement of the general statute. And that language is pulled directly
Okay.
from there.
Any objection to that change?
All right, that has not been approved, changed these provisions to this ordinance. Again, just cleared up this section, specify clerk of the Superior Court. You can't conflict with chapter 160D. Again, most of this is clarification in the
Excuse me.
remainder. Yes,
Excuse me, I'm not, are you finished with 401 or we're down to,
we're just about to start 402.
okay, I have a suggestion for 402 when you get.
Okay, so 401, again, most of that following the review officer is cleanup. 402, so for this one, no land disturbing or construction activity with the exception of, bless you, utility testing, engineering testing, or surveying can be carried out in conjunction. The subdivision of land shall be commenced until the preliminary plan for a major subdivision or final plat for a minor subdivision has been approved.
That's to help with what we just divided up.
And that sentence to me is, and if you really stop and read it, and even if you read it right there, it doesn't make sense. So I would suggest the changes as follows, just to get right to it. No land disturbing or construction activity, comma, with the exception of utility testing, engineering testing, or surveying, delete can be carried out. So delete the words can be carried out. So it reads, with the exception of utility testing, engineering testing, or surveying in conjunction with the subdivision of land, comma, shall be commenced until the preliminary plan for a major subdivision or final plat for subdivision has been approved by the planning and zoning commission, period. So we're saying no land disturbing construction activity can be commenced, blah, 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 with the exception of, and then it lists those several.
Can you, I lost you after,
Okay, there really only
so no
three
land
changes.
disturbing activity, comma.
Yeah,
with the
put a
exception-
comma after activity.
Yeah.
Delete the 4 words can be carried out,
Mhm.
put a comma after land in the next line.
Land,
That's it.
okay.
2 commas and delete the 4 words.
Any objection?
Can I get a motion to make that?
I make a motion for approval.
Is there a second?
second.
This covers all of the 401 changes. 402 change.
Yep.
402.
Well, we don't, yeah, we don't need to vote on each individual change. We'll just vote on the revisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay, thank you.
All right, page 6, we're moving on to Article 5. Section 501.1, this was just cleanup.
Can I ask you a question for help here? And I'm sorry to bog
Yes.
you down here again. I don't really understand this thing about, what do they call it? Conservation
Yeah.
design or something.
This is something that Susan has recommended we go back and look at in
Yeah,
detail.
are we forcing people that are 10 acres or more to do this? But it doesn't say that, but then it has a section about you can't get around it by dividing your lot into 2 lots of less than 10 acres. So it sounds like we're saying you can't do that.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't have
I
an
just don't
answer. I don't have an answer for that, but I think I definitely would recommend that we go back and really look at what this section is
Good.
saying in the
This whole
future.
conservation design idea was through me.
Yeah, and we don't need to look at the specifics of what this requirement is, but I do think we should come back later on and do that, definitely.
Good.
Mhm. Yeah,
We won't change
I've
that
got a
this.
I've got
I
a
don't have any-
big list. I've got a big list of things to go back and
I'm sorry.
do. No, that's
You didn't know
okay.
what you were getting into.
I think Kayla's telling us we didn't know what we're getting.
Well, I know that.
Hey,
Are you sure?
I'm rolling with it, aren't I? I'm rolling with it. I'm rolling with it. No, I think this is, and this was also a recommendation made by Susan to me that we go into this section and really talk about what it's doing. But for, purposes of being in compliance, we'll just push the specifics of conservation design aside for right now. Okay, so moving on to page 7 of the amended subdivision ordinance, we're talking about section 501.2, number 2. So, general cleanup, zoning was referred to as zoning classification of the property. It's much clearer to just refer to it as the zoning district as referenced in the town of Montreat zoning ordinance.
I
Okay,
have my, page 7.
6.
um,
It's gonna be-
Bill, we're in,
Got it.
yeah,
I have the suggestion on that in your corrected green language there. Delete the word in after located. Because it says zoning district in which the tract is located as specified. You don't need the ends that you already had in which. Yeah, the second end should be deleted.
the zoning district in which oh, no, this
Tract
one's-
is located.
in which the tract is located. Okay,
Also,
all right, can I get a motion and a second?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Uh,
Moving on to number 3, again, additional cleanup. 3G specified town of Montreat zoning ordinance rather than zoning
Is
regulations.
there a motion to do that?
We don't need to,
Okay,
yeah,
We'll
if
do
you
all-
guys aren't changing it, we don't need a motion.
okay.
All right, next page, section 501.4. Changed corporate limits to planning and development jurisdiction.
I suggest putting a period after the word town because the unincorporated areas are included within planning and I think in other places in the ordinance, we've done that.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So it says within the planning and development jurisdiction of the town, period.
Okay.
Because the ETJ is included within the
It
planning
is.
and development jurisdiction of the town already.
That is correct.
Is there a motion to do that? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Second. I'm just keeping track of the motions that y'all need. All right, moving on to number 5. The zoning administrator is referred to in several different ways. Code administrator is one of them. I feel it's clear to just be consistent with how we're referring to staff. Okay.
Okay.
All right, section 501.7, again, revising the title of the zoning administrator. Moving on to 501.8, same thing. Okay, now we are in Article 6. So section 601. So this is where we get into the change in who is approving minor subdivisions, again, because of that discretionary decision. So I'll kind of go a little bit more into that. Section 601, we're specifying who can apply for final approval. It's the subdivider. Section 601.1, again, the zoning official does not have authority to make discretionary decisions. So at this point, the way the ordinance is written, the zoning administrator cannot approve the plats. Under number 2, so we change the approving body to Planning and Zoning Commission from the zoning official. Yes,
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Because the statutes gives the right to do that.
it does. The problem is that under section 3, if it is found that improvements will be required, the subdivider shall submit 3 additional copies, blah, 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 blah. Susan informed me that that is a discretionary decision. There is no specific list of what these improvements are. So that decision, the zoning administrator does not have authority to make that specific decision. If we were to come in and say, these are the improvements that are required with every minor plat, then the zoning administrator would have the authority to approve the plat.
You're talking about improvements to the plat itself.
Improvements to the land associated with the subdivision. That's why the no right of way dedication, no road building, those are all discretionary decisions. So that's,
Well, we said earlier that a minor subdivision might be approved.
but you can't do no roads, no new roads required. No dedications, all of that. So what we're talking about is my road's here, my land's here, I cut it in half. We're good. That's minor. But a major is, well, you're cutting your property in half, so you need to build another road. Well, where does the road need to go? It's that type of discretionary decision, the zoning administrator does not have the authority to make.
But a minor subdivision, if it has any of those things, it becomes a major.
Right.
If it doesn't have any of those things,
But
couldn't a minor be
this-
approved by the zoning administrator?
right, so yes, but number 3 in here, if it is found that improvements will be required. Now, these could be related not just to utility dedications, these could be related to performance guarantees, such as, we need to make specific improvements to the street or something of that nature. The zoning administrator cannot determine that needs to happen beforehand. That's what it's saying. So yes, there's kind of 2 pieces to this, is that the minor subdivision, you can't have new road construction, anything of that nature required with it, then it kicks it into major. But then this section says that if it is found that improvements will be required, but it doesn't state, further up that these are the specific improvements that the zoning administrator looks at, and if these are not met, you cannot get approval.
So Kayla, are you saying there's not enough specificity in the ordinance for you to apply your discretion?
Yes.
I would like Susan to give us an opinion about that, because I'm looking at the statute and it says the subdivision regulation may provide that final
Yeah.
decisions on preliminary plats, et cetera, may be made by one of the following: governing board on recommendation of the designated body. 3, a designated planning board, technical review committee of local government, staff members or other designated body or staff person.
Right. So
Sounds like
yes,
Susan is saying we haven't given enough guidance
Yes.
in the ordinance for the zoning administrator to provide to apply the discretion.
that's exactly right. And it's based on this first, that the set number 601.1, 2, and 3 shall find that it either does or does not meet the requirements of this ordinance, and what improvements, if any, will be required.
What are the
So that's exactly right. What Susan has said, the way that it is written right now, the zoning administrator does not have the authority. Now, what we can do is later on come back and outline what those specific requirements were, and then switch it to the zoning administrator.
So we would group in, we would shift it to the P and Z now, and then
Mhm.
shift it back to the zoning administrator after we add some specificity on what the ZA needs to do.
Yes.
I'm sorry to be so dense, but it says in 601.12. The Planning and Zoning Commission, other than the zoning officer, shall review said minor subdivision and shall find that it either does or does not meet the requirements of this ordinance. And what improvements, if any, will be required.
And
Then
then
a
it
set, then a
directs you-
separate one, 3, says under what circumstances if it is found that improvements are required, then you've got to go to the zoning committee. But why can't the zoning administrator make that decision then too?
I can't determine whether or not somebody will have to do improvements of that nature. It directs you to section 604, which is improvements, installations, and guarantees, which is something that the zoning administrator does not have authority to do. I do have authority to review plats, but not if it's discretionary and if it leads you to this performance guarantee, completion of improvements.
I'm not going to worry for it. So I see.
Now it does under section 604 give examples of what the required improvements would be. So street access to each lot, which we know based on the definition would kick it up to major. A water supply for each lot, a sewage disposal system, required drainage or sediment control facilities, street markers, fire hydrants, any of the conservation subdivision design requirements and provisions for underground electrical and telephone lines. So those are so those are the types of performance improvements that they're referring to. So I don't have authority to tell somebody to do that.
So determine if you need improvements or not is discretionary. It's what Susan said.
Yes.
I mean, it seems to me that you're exercising discretion to approve the plat, even if you're just going by a checklist, it's still discretion. I mean, approving something is discretionary.
Yeah, I'm just going with what she said.
I understand.
Now, what she said is that we can come back and make it so that it's within a box and then switch it to the zoning administrator.
Give you less discretion to stay within the box.
Yes.
But you're
Yes.
still just exercising discretion.
Right. And I understand. Yeah. So I mean, and again, these came from, so I will note that issue and we can come back at a later time and dive deeper into who really should be approving these and how we make sure that it's defensible. But again, this was Susan's recommendation.
Okay,
Yes.
if we've left that for a second before we get too far down to the ordinance.
Mhm.
As I was reading the ordinance, section 504, which you did not make any changes, so it's not in our little summary
Mhm.
there. It near the end of that last paragraph, third to the last line, it says Article 5, Section 508. I think that should be 509.
Hang on one second. I'm a little turned around.
So on page, you got to go to the real ordinance, page 14 of the ordinance itself, not the summary that we're working from.
Okay, which section are we?
Section 504
504.
on page 17, I think it is. 14, sorry, page 14.
504. And you said it should go
Right
to,
near the end of that section on page 14, it references as required by Article 5, Section 508.
should be 509
I
point.
think that should be
2.
509, double backstop. me if you
Yeah,
will.
509 easements. Mhm.
Yep.
Can I get a motion in a second?
I heard that it's a motion.
It was a
Is there
motion.
second?
Second.
Any objection, all in favor, say aye. All
Aye.
opposed. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Bill, I apologize. I don't have, further information on that.
Yeah.
I'm not a lawyer.
No,
I'm just doing my
Yeah.
best, so.
I thought Susan was splitting real split hairs.
Yeah.
So
That's
Oh,
what we lawyers do.
that's right. So anyway,
So,
I
okay.
apologize to, well, I don't apologize. but-
No. I appreciate the discussion and we can come back to that and dive deeper into it
Okay.
later. Okay. So moving on to page 17, changed improvement to performance,
Page 7.
page 17 of the main.
Which section?
We're under section 601.13.
But,
I am
just
in-
referring to this one.
I'm in the main I'm in the main full amended
Okay.
ordinance.
I'm just on 9, your little summary there. Okay, page 9.
0.1.
So if you go to the back of your packets, in the major, in the full copy.
So what section are you in now? Six?
We are 601.1. Full, well, 3 carries on to page 17, but 3 and 4. Okay, so we just changed the language of improvement to performance in 601.13. Under 601.14 specified who records the plat, which is the subdivider. Number 5, we changed the appeal process for planning and zoning commission decisions
To match the statute.
Can I make a minor suggestion in that number 5?
Yes,
It reads decisions of planning and zoning commission or appeals to court by proceedings in nature of certiorari. It says here and incorporated by reference in. I would say delete the here incorporated by reference and just say as provided. Rather than incorporate that statute into. As provided, just say as. After certiorari, just say as provided in NCGS, 163-406.
can I get a motion, a second?
Motion, I make that motion.
There's a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. I think this is more motions than we've ever made.
That's why I'm writing them in here.
I think Angie took a good week off.
Yeah. All right, section 602, just continuing on, changed the reference to the zoning official to zoning administrator. Next page, page 18, section 603, preliminary plan. So this referenced the board or its staff. So we just specified planning and zoning commission. 603.21. It referred to town street department. The town's street department is public works. So changed that. Moving on, page 19. Changed the reference to the town administrator to town manager, since that's the new format, and revised town limits to be town of Montreat's planning and development jurisdiction. Underneath that, changed zoning official to administrator. Moving on, page 20, section 604.2, changed improvement to performance guarantees. Performance is how it's referenced in the general statute. So we're just being consistent with that terminology. Okay, so the next couple changes, these are pulled directly from the state statute. And I just incorporated them, verbatim into the subdivision ordinance. So 604.21. Turn around. Let's go.
So these are verbatim from the statute. Anybody have any questions about these?
Now, I'm happy to run through the specifics for your own edification if that's helpful, just so we all know what the process is. Otherwise, we can move on.
Let's move on.
Okay.
I'm just looking at the clock.
All right.
Yeah.
Yep, these are all verbatim from the state statute. So that would be all of section 604.2.
Okay.
So moving all the way past that, we're going to 604.3, page 23 of the main ordinance. Again, specifying who the responsible party is, the subdivider's sole expense, and adding a reference into 604.32, number 2 to the correct appendix.
Yep.
Moving on from that, we're skipping to page 25, section 605.3. Susan asked that street be added into dedications so that if there's any streets or portions thereof that need to be dedicated via a plat, that is included in there.
Where's this? one?
605.3. Just
I see
street.
it. Okay,
Yep.
yeah, well, it's hard to see the. Yeah.
Okay. All right, page 26. Revising zoning official to zoning administrator. And then we get into variances. So right now, the variance, deciding variances from the subdivision ordinance is assigned to the Board of Commissioners. However, the Board of Adjustment hears variances from the zoning ordinance. So Susan and I believe that it's more appropriate to just have them also do the variances to subdivision as well, since they do them for zoning now.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yes.
I concur with what when Susan came with. I'm gonna simplify it a little bit. Section 606,
Yes.
to go to the fourth line where it says adjustment for a variance from provisions, period, and it says said application may, and it has a lot of language.
Yeah.
Just say said for a variance from said provisions, I would recommend inserting after the word provisions in accordance with section 310 of the Montreat zoning ordinance, period, and delete the rest of the paragraph. Because it's just kind of tracking some of the language in that.
Now, the only reason I'd be hesitant to do that is if the zoning ordinance is revised and the number that the variance is in the zoning ordinance, like if a section's added above it, it may change. We'd have to come back and revise this ordinance as well.
Well, the only thing I'm concerned about is I wasn't sure, I didn't do a word by word comparison. I'm not sure like that 32 days, is that exactly what it says in the section 310? I mean, they need to be consistent. So I was just saying, I'd almost rather if you change that, we'd come back and change this, but
Let me tell you in 1 second. I think it's 30.
yeah, so rather than trying to bring it over and make it consistent with the variance ordinance and the zoning ordinance, the variance provisions in the zoning ordinance, I would just refer to it, and if they make a change, we don't have to come back and change this unless the only thing we'd have to change is if they change the number, numeration and everything else, change it. But it's a big, long 2 or 3 page section in the zoning ordinance bill. You remember we dealt with variances.
We can either do that or we can reference the state statute. We could do that as well. Because the variance process is outlined in there as well.
Well, I would just think we've got a very detailed process on variances over there in the zoning ordinance that a lot of time was spent by this commission the last 2 years working on, and I would just say just as incorporated,
Up to you guys.
What's this reference?
310.
310.
So I would say insert in accordance with section 310 of the Montreat zoning ordinance, period, and then delete the rest of the paragraph.
Was there a motion to do that?
I'll make that motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just need help understanding this language of why they've taken out the planning and zoning commission and it goes straight to the Board of Adjustments. I'm looking at 606 in the variance. I just need some clarification on that.
I'll try to answer it. I think all variances are handled by the Board of Adjustment.
A
right now.
variance is a
Okay.
quasi judicial decision. So the reason that, for example, with a text amendment, that it would go through the Planning and
That's my
Zoning
question.
Commission,
Uh-huh.
those are legislative decisions versus a quasi judicial. So
So we needed to take out the planning and
The-
zoning
the-
language.
this process didn't really match what you would do for quasi judicial. So
Okay.
yeah.
The variances in the zoning ordinance are handled by Board of
The Board of
Adjustment. So it just makes sense that they handle variances in the subdivision ordinance as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a quasi judicial decision, which is a different type of decision than the decisions that the
Okay.
Planning and Zoning Commission and Board of Commissioners make. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I just want to ask, so where it says would because of conditions peculiar to the site cause an unnecessary hardship, does that match the language that we have for the Board of Adjustment?
So, yeah, so this section is almost a consolidated version of what's in the zoning ordinance. I do agree with Dan that it should be consistent between both.
Right.
Now that text about unnecessary hardships, that is the definition of a variance.
Okay.
So I am okay with either incorporating the entire text from the zoning ordinance or just providing a reference. But just keep in mind that if we do just do a reference, anytime that reference is changed in the zoning ordinance, we are going to also have to do a separate amendment to the subdivision ordinance as well.
Well,
So just that
well,
to keep in mind.
I would somewhat disagree with that, only if they change the numeration. Otherwise, we could change where I said in accordance with section 310 of the Montreat zoning ordinance, we could add a comma as it may be amended. So then if it ever is amended, unless they change it to 309, you see, the
We can-
310 as amended would always,
Now, what I'm specifically referring to is if the number were to
Yeah.
change. Yeah,
we
not,
would
not,
have-
not the
they
content.
would have to change.
So we
but-
can add as amended. If that's the motion you guys want to make, that's fine with
Yep.
me.
I think that's good.
So I
Is
guess
there-
in accordance with section 310 Monterey zoning ordinance,
As amended.
as it may be
As
amended,
may, as it may. be
and
typed.
as it may be amended. How do you word it?
Yeah. Just as it may be amended.
As it may be. amended.
Comma as.
Yeah.
As it may be amended. But you raised a good question. I'm not sure. I checked to see if that unnecessary hardship is the way it's worded in the zoning ordinance. I'm not sure how they word it, but describe a variance simply in the zoning ordinance, but we need to be consistent with that as well.
I can tell you in 1 second, I believe it's consistent, but I'll double check.
I
If you guys can make that, make this in accordance with
Right.
a motion in a second.
Dan, can you read the sentence one more time for me?
Okay, so
It's on page 14. It ends on 14. Or, well, it's different. It's section
So
606.
right near the end, at the end of the first sentence, where it ends with from said provisions. You with me?
Okay.
Just change the period, delete the period, don't even need to punctuate, just add in accordance with section 310 of the Monterey zoning ordinance, comma, as it may be amended.
So you took out in accordance with the provisions of, so provisions of is out there. In accordance with section 310.
Well, it says for variance from said provisions
In accordance.
in
with.
accordance with section 310 of Monterey.
Okay, so in the zoning ordinance variances, when unnecessary hardships would result from carrying out the strict letter of this ordinance.
That's what it says in
Now-
the zoning ordinance.
That's what it says. And then unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance is the first finding of fact that the Board of Adjustment would make when it comes to a variance. So we could remove the because of conditions peculiar to the site. Is that? Okay. Can we make that a motion?
I motion that for section 606, we remove the phrase because of conditions peculiar to the site.
So now that first sentence, the only sentence in the variance section is going to read, oh, I'm sorry, can we get a second and a vote on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what we're voting on.
Yeah,
So
that's good. So,
Removing because of conditions peculiar to the site.
So
But
the
that's a
motion,
major part of the-
so the motion I make,
That section is only one finding. The reference to section 310 references all of the findings.
so it's a,
but then the conditions peculiar to the site, isn't
That's
that part of the
one,
variance?
that's one piece of the variance. There are 5 other findings that also need to be made.
so I think the question is at the start of 606, it's the very first sentence. After the addition or the zoning ordinance would, then there are 2 descriptions, summary descriptions that may conflict with what is in section 310, because it specifies because of conditions peculiar to the site, cause an unnecessary hardship. I mean, really, do we need those phrases in there at all if we're going to reference section 310? That's
And-
really the question.
Just to add to that, so how a variance is described before getting into the specific conditions, which include peculiar site conditions. It just says when unnecessary hardships would result from carrying out the strict letter of this ordinance. That's
What section?
section 310.42, page 34. So we can take it out, we can leave it in. Either way, when the Board of Adjustment is evaluating a variance, they have to look at these 6 findings of fact. They don't just look at peculiar site conditions. So we can either take it out, we can leave it in. Regardless, the process will be the same. Just stating one of them doesn't mean that they only have to look at that one.
I support. First. What? I support the leading the language. So,
would you just read the, how it's going to end up so that we can follow where they're at?
Where a subdivider can show that strict adherence to a provision of this ordinance or the zoning ordinance would cause an unnecessary hardship, the subdivider may submit a written application to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from said provisions and provision and then S in parentheses, in accordance with section 310 of the Montreat zoning ordinance as it may be amended.
That's all. So that's a motion. Is there a second to that? Vote?
This is a motion about deleting.
I made the motion to delete. Did we already cover the motion for the change to 310? The reference to.
I don't think I got a second and a vote on that.
So
So-
all the amendments we discussed to 606, is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Is
I'll
there a
second.
And this is subdivision only, not.
This is
We're
606.
making it consistent with zoning.
Yes, we're not making a change to the zoning ordinances.
I'm trying to make this good.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Uh,
All opposed. Thank you.
Who was the second?
I second.
Okay, and then we're gonna take everything else out. Okay. All right, moving on to section 607. We revised where appeals go. So they're appealing Board of Adjustment, so it follows this specific general statute,
What section were you on? I'm sorry.
607.
I would make a reference, make a motion that's simplified, Mr. Chairman. That we change as we did before, where it talks about this nature of our certiorari. Herein incorporated by reference to change here incorporated by reference to as provided in. Or as provided and fix that within, rather than incorporating a statute. Just
So as,
change the
language
words.
one more time
delete
again.
Herein incorporated by reference. Replaced with as provided.
okay, can I get a motion, second and
I'll
vote?
make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor,
Discussion. Sorry, circus, what I'm not gonna say. Certiorari is term used in the current appeal in state court.
It's a form of appeal.
And, when I went to, I was listening to count 5 of this, 3. Went to the definitions in it. It seemed to be different than an appeal. Appeal is one, and then the certiorari is conviction. The judge of the Superior Court is ordering the lower court to do something a little different.
It's just a different way of appealing certiorari. Two ways, like in Florida, you go from the circuit court to the district court by appeal, and then by certiorari to the Supreme Court. It's just a different way.
Just to add into that, so. the general statute is the provision for quasi judicial procedure under appeals. Well, I believe. Sorry, hang on one second. So every quasi judicial decision shall be subject to review by the Superior Court by proceedings in the nature of certiorari pursuant to General Statute 160D 1402. So it is saying that quasi judicial decisions are appealed to the Superior Court in that nature.
And certiorari is the form of the
Definition.
Was there an issue with this now?
No.
I just, all in favor of what that change was?
I just need clarification. This is actually from the statute. I mean, it's not, okay.
No.
Thank you.
Under NCGS 160D 406K judicial review verbatim, every quasi judicial decision shall be subject to review by the Superior Court by proceedings in the nature of certiorari pursuant to the general
Okay.
statute that governs that process.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Uh,
Opposed?
All right, moving on from that, we deleted 607.1 and 607.2 since all of the appeal procedures fall under that one statute. Okay, moving on to section Article 7, page 29 of the main ordinance, changed references from 160A to 160D.
Where are we?
We, yeah,
Oh,
section
I'm over
700.
Subdivision order.
Section 700, that's page 16 of the staff report, page 29 of the main ordinance.
I see it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, just change two references to the correct state statute. Moving on from that, Article 8, this is section 30 of the main ordinance, section 16 or page 16 and 17 of the staff report. So these were mostly revisions provided by Susan. She wanted the title of section 800 changed to reference the general statute. So instead of being criminal and civil procedures, it's penalties for transferring lots and unapproved subdivision, then changing some of the language within the first part of section 800 to refer to the planning and development regulation jurisdiction of the town, and who thereafter subdivides the land rather than his land, and that where the penalties that they'd be subject to live, which is in 160D-807. So as a note, sorry, hang on one second. So as a note, okay. The general statute 160A 175B11 states that ordinances adopted under chapter 160D, which includes subdivision ordinance, cannot impose criminal penalties. So that's why we took that out. Yep. Moving on from that, 801, which is just below.
Excuse me.
Yes.
In fact, 800, and Mr. Shah may need to give his legal opinion on this. In section 800, the last section of the last sentence, 4 lines up, begins with the town of Montreat may enjoin. I'm not sure a town can enjoin something that they stop it or something, but I would say if we're looking for a legal injunction,
They get a file.
it would be, should change the word enjoin to bring an action for injunction. But I don't know if we want to force the town to have to, it may be something we need to discuss and some of what we can legally do, but if we're trying to stop a sale or a transfer, I don't think they can just say stop. They may have to go to court to get a legal injunction.
You could say bring an action to enjoin.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
And you might ask Susan about that between now and then.
I don't think the town can just enjoin.
Yeah. They've got to
That's a
see.
legal courts have to enjoin.
So the local government, this is 160D 807A verbatim. The local government may bring an action for injunction of any illegal subdivision, transfer, conveyance, or sale of land, and the court shall, upon appropriate findings, issue an injunction and order requiring the offending party to comply with the subdivision regulations.
Yeah, that's my point. We need to change that word enjoin to
Understood.
bring an action for injunction.
Oh,
Yeah.
what you just said.
I think we need to change enjoin to bring an action for injunction.
That's in that, bring an action to.
The local government may bring an action for
Or he
injunction.
says to enjoin, that's.
Bring an action to.
So just say
Is
bring
that
an
what we want to add in there? So the town of Montreat may bring an action to enjoin.
He said, please.
Okay, can I get a
I'll move.
motion,
I'll so
second and
move.
vote?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Okay, perfect. All right.
And while I've got the floor,
Yes.
we skipped over something else. And this is in section 701, but it's not in your executive summary. The last section, last line, I guess it is. Well, hang on, let me find. No, it's in section 3, subsection 3 of section 701.
Mhm.
It talks about powers and duties of planning and zoning, blah, blah, blah. And then it says to review and make recommendations to the Board of Commissioners regarding proposed variances from any amendments to the ordinance. I think what they're talking about is any changes or whatever, but if you throw in the word variances, that has legal connotations, and I just think that word should be
Where are
Is
you
that-
reading?
It's section 701, but we don't have it in that one this summer. You gotta go
Seven,
back.
7013, yeah, 29. We could take out we could take out variances from any and just have it say proposed amendments to the ordinance.
But yeah, exactly. That's, as a matter of fact, you read my words there right here. Exactly.
wanna
That's what
make
I,
a
that's what I
motion?
would propose.
Are you
Can we-
moving?
Motion, second and vote?
I'll make such a motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I think Sally got that second in first.
No.
Okay.
All right.
All right, back to page 30, section 801.
801,
Yep, and this is page 17 of the staff report. So the last sentence in there, there's no requirement under 168 or was no requirement under 168-373 to have this ordinance filed with the Register of Deeds, and that is not a practice I've ever encountered. To have an actual ordinance recorded in the Register of Deeds.
Yeah.
I've never, yeah, so that's out.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the rest is just my own red lines of changing the effective date. Okay, now there's one last revision. It's in the appendix. So Appendix E, this is page 17 of the staff report. Oh, I guess it actually popped up a couple other places that I didn't note. Appendix E, which is page, oh my word.
31.
Sorry, appendix number 6. The 51. Yep. And this is just changing the title of. And it's not run on.
oh, I see over there, yeah.
It's just town administrator, town manager.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve that?
We're not changing.
Yeah, that's
And
fine.
then the other one.
Oh, you're not changing it. I thought you,
We're agreeing to that.
oh, I don't see, it's not changed on mine, that's why.
It's not.
Okay,
And then there's one that. But is in the main ordinance. This is page 37, appendix D, just changing zoning official to zoning administrator. Apologies on that.
and you made that change, so. That's okay.
Okay, so those are all the amendments. So just to kind of review our game plan, make sure I understand what we're doing. I'm gonna make all these amendments. Bill, you're going to call a special meeting and we'll review those and move them through. Okay.
Hopefully that won't take it.
Yeah. No.
Then I propose that that meeting, we take up the other one, that's subject to wireless. The wireless,
The wireless.
the wireless, it's now quarter to one.
Okay, up to you guys if we want to table that until the special meeting.
Mhm.
If it's up to you guys, if you want to table that and then
Yeah,
bring it
I
to the
just
special.
wanna make sure that that's okay with you too, but
That's fine. The revisions to that one are far shorter. So it's up to you guys.
okay. So that's what I would suggest.
My notes.
Good. Mine too. Okay,
Bill, are you thinking we do it in November? When is the town, November 10th? I was
yes, it's whatever.
second Thursday, which is November 10th. What is it saying now?
Now, as a note, I'm only here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Right.
So it will have to be one of those days.
Right. So,
So, I'm wondering so that we make, do you want to, the town council meet in December?
It's up to you guys.
It's the town council, I'm trying to-
Oh, do they?
Take it in January, so that still gets done.
right,
That's what I'm trying. I
right,
don't want to delay you going to town council.
right, because we would need to do it in November in
Right.
order to get it to the town, the Board of Commissioners at their December meeting, if they meet in December.
Now, yeah, I mean, these amendments will not take me long to incorporate. I have a little bit of background research I have to do, but I believe I can turn that around quite quickly. So it's really up to you guys, when you want to meet. And I'll let you know if that is reasonable for me.
Do y'all want to meet again next week just to do that?
Um,
These two ordinances?
I am only here half a day on Tuesday. Wednesday, I have Board of Adjustment training at night, and then I'm gone the rest of the week. So not next week.
So how about the following week?
The week of the 24th.
Week of the 24th? I will be here. Okay. So we're now to November. Why don't we do the second Thursday?
I said, I still have to be a deal by the calendar.
Okay, the
The
10th, okay. I've already got that on my calendar, if possible, P and Z, so that's what I've always had it. Okay.
Now,
You will,
as a note,
you get your comments.
Now, as a note, with the wireless communications ordinance changes, which that one is not at all in compliant with the state. It's unlikely that if you guys have the same level of revisions that we've had to this, it's not going to go to the Board of Commissioners that same night. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It would have to go December. Yeah.
Your real goal was January.
As soon as possible was my goal.
All right, well, okay, then let's do it on November the 10th.
November the 10th is fine.
10:30, is that okay?
So, can we get a motion to, I think we have to, are we continuing the hearing to
Let's go set a special-
set a special meeting?
That's, I'm thinking of also getting minutes. I think if we, let's adjourn, let's finish this meeting, defer that to the next meeting of the set. I'll set a meeting for November 10th at 10:30.
Yeah, we probably, the special meeting, it will be only what is on the agenda for that, so we can limit it to discussion of these two text amendments. So we won't have minutes or anything like that, because it's, the special meeting is only what is listed on the notice for it. So we limit it specifically.
So we'll limit it to the final, a supplemental consideration of this, plus consideration of the wireless. And I think.
And Kayla, are you okay if we send you questions in the meantime, so we can all be
Yes.
prepared and you can, and then.
That
yeah,
is,
send in
that
your
is
questions.
fine. Just make sure that any corrections you guys want to make are done in the public hearing.
Got
Okay?
it.
I think that's really all the business that we have.
Well, there is one other thing that I did just want to touch on, because I did have the Board of Adjustment do it.
Yep. Are you
If
talking
I
about
can,
in the meeting, streaming?
yeah, I'd just like you guys to take a vote on that.
Let me ask a question. Have we approved all of the changes that we did not have to second? All the changes that it's written, we hadn't done that.
Anything you guys can, well,
You
we're not
want us to-
approving it. We're not approving it yet. Yeah, we're not approving it yet.
So that's a good point.
There we have.
Yeah, we'll do an actual motion to approve on the second draft. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so if you guys can just take a vote on whether or not you want to continue publicly streaming the meetings. Again, since we did come out of the state of emergency, I did have the Board of Adjustment vote on that. And I'm just gonna have you guys vote on it, just so that, we're clear. as
Meaning
to
to
what we're doing.
continue.
Either to continue or discontinue.
Right. What did the Board of Adjustment do?
They discontinued.
Discontinue. Well, to me,
I
it's
move we
helpful.
discontinue.
Oh,
Okay.
I,
No, is there a second to that motion? Motion dies for lack of. What? Did you second it? All in favor of the motion? What? Okay.
I can,
Discussion.
I can you just go?
They're watching it right now. Discussion.
As of 2 minutes, or as of right now, reported, there are 2 minutes, there are 2 people watching the stream.
Come on.
Earlier, as of today, we had 7 people watching the stream during Montreat's presentation.
I withdraw my motion.
Do you accept the withdrawal, Mr. Seconder? Okay, so would anyone like to move that we continue to stream?
I move that we continue to stream. the
Is there a
meetings.
second to that? You're voting. Because you can't vote. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion pass.
Perfect.
Right.
So we'll have a special meeting,
Special meeting on
Wanna-
November the 10th at 10:30.
which I will watch you guys do.
Right, and then you, I
And I'll
didn't mean to just,
No, no,
you can get your comments.
Okay, comments in and I'm going to see my kids, grandkids, so
Good for you.
Very-
Yeah.
And if you have any comments on the
I'll
other.
send them.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
So move. Second.
But thank you all for everything.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I'm sorry we involved in this section. But it's,
Oh, it's good.
because when you're
Very-
talking about an ordinance, minutiae. it is
And
minutiae.
Kayla, thank you. And welcome, Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome.